welcome to Newsfirst in Focus. This week has been an eventful week. We saw on the 17th of August this year the general election was held, and now there is talk of a national government. No party was able to form a government to have the 113 members in parliament. What is a national government? Also, this week we saw Assistant Secretary of Central and South Asian Affairs, Nisha Biswal, arriving in Sri Lanka and saying that a US-sponsored resolution on Sri Lanka will be brought forth. This time around, it is in support of the country. What is the future of the Ministry of Justice in the island? To discuss all this and more, I have the man himself, the individual who is responsible for most of these areas. That is the Minister of Justice, which is Aswaja Paksa. Good evening and welcome to the show. Starting off, what is the national government? Do we really have a national government in play?
Of course, that we have departed from the normal interpretation of a national government in terms of 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which was passed in April. The national government is interpreted as a government which would be formed together with the party which take the most number of seats in the parliament and the other party which secures the next highest number in the parliament. Now, as it is, that's the national government means the United National Party and UPFA.
When you take a look at the past, let's take England as an example. We saw a national government being formed in the 1930s, and then we saw Winston Churchill having a national government from 1941 to 1945 in order to combat the World War II. Is there a national crisis, and what is the need of the hour in Sri Lanka to form a national government?
Really, that is what was in England, was a national need at a time where the nation had some disastrous period during the World War. That type of national government is quite different from a government that we are talking of. Ours, of course, is not that kind of that's the emergency situation as where the country is facing a war. But that there are a lot of burning issues which we could not resolve during the last 3 to 4 decades. Especially that there are constitutional issues, then the rule of law, then the good governance, then changing of some structural organizations, all kinds of things that we want to give the priority and to have a consensus of all the political parties represented in the parliament, then just to have some national agenda, especially that we expect to draft a new constitution within the period of next 2 years with the support of all the political parties and also with the participation of these civil society.
Mr. Minister, you have the President representing a different political party, that is the United People's Freedom Alliance, and he's also the chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. And then you have Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, representing the United National Party. Can they move forward? From two different parties, two different ideologies, can you move forward? Can you forge ahead?
No, the democracy, the definition for the democracy is the unity within diversity. That's there can be two different ideas, various ideas of particular political parties. But that we have already agreed on certain matters, on certain terms as to how we should resolve these national issues. And even prior to the election, presidential election held on 8th of January, and also prior to the election held for the parliament on 17th August, that we had our constant discussions with the president, and he had discussions with his own party people, and we have agreed on certain issues as to how that we should resolve. And
what are the issues that are discussed?
Basically the constitutional issue. Now the basic thing.
So you all are forming a national government just to have a new constitution.
Not only that, really. That's there are a lot of bills to be introduced in the parliament. For example, right to
amendments.
In addition to the constitutional amendments, what we think is to have completely a new constitution, to replace by a new constitution, and this right to information bill. Then it's another bill on independent audit commission bill, and there are so many other bills that we'll have to bring forward. In addition to that, we'll have to think about some good mechanism about the government administration, the good governance, and under the 19th Amendment, of course, that we have already made arrangements that we have made all the setup for the establishment of independent commissions.
We saw a similar situation in the year 2001. We saw President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga leading the president at that time, that is representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, and we saw Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe being appointed as the Prime Minister of the country through a general election. However, that government did not last for too long.
That is true.
Will that be a case in point this time as well?
No, it won't happen, because in 2001, there was no any consensus, that there was no any agreement among themselves. They just that President Chandrika Kumaratunga had to respect to the mandate given to the United National Party and appointed Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister. But here, this is a case where the leader of SLP, the present President, agreed on certain solid terms with the United National Party and its leader, and we faced the election together, both presidential election as well as the parliamentary election, and therefore the situation is quite different this time.
The statement that was given out by the President a few weeks before the general elections, did that come in favor of the United National Party at the last election?
No, we don't.
Or was probably the election results would have been different? Do you believe so?
But our position was that we did not want to get involved in their affairs in the party politics of SLP or UPFA. Few weeks after the election, when President Sirisena, Maithripala Sirisena became the leader of the SLP and UPFA, our Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, and myself, we categorically told him that we have no any objection that he can get anybody in his party to lead the parliamentary election, whether it is Mrs. Bandaranaike or Mr. Nimal Siripala, it makes no matters. But we expect him to be conduct the election independently and fairly. We incorporated those provisions into the 19th Amendment too. That is what we expected from him, that we gave he had the freedom to conduct his own election the way that his party wants. That was not a matter for us. In any event, that our target was to go for at least for 113, but we failed. But before the election, not only the presidential election, parliamentary election, even before the presidential election, we said even if we get the majority government, that we will invite for a national government, because we want to go for this reconciliation issues, new constitution and kinds of things.
Mr. Minister, you spoke about good governance. You have fought against corruption. You've been a crusader who fought against corruption in the island for many, many years. We saw the man in which you were the chairman of the Co-op Committee in 2007. You put out a very strong report in terms of the corruption that has taken place in the island at that time. However, last 8 months, are you satisfied the way in which the UNP has governed the country?
I think that nobody will be 100% satisfied, because that what we undertook was the whole structure, all mechanism, where that so many officials, the politicians who were involved in most of these corruptions which occurred during the past regime, and therefore that we had to start gradually to clear up most of those institutions. For best example is the bribery commission, whereas that we appointed a new Director General and she was doing a very good job. More than
50 cases.
50% of the complaints out of 1,900 which had been, lying there without attending or without having any investigation for 4 years. Then she was trying to do a lot of good things, but obstructed by the commissioners themselves, and there are some litigations over that also. Now, of course, that there won't be a big issue in the next parliament. The first thing that we will have to attend to is to form the Constitutional Council, then through the Constitutional Council to make recommendations for the appointment of new commissioners to the 10 commissions referred to in the 19th Amendment. With that, of course, we are quite confident that we will be able to do a better job.
In order to expedite this process, why cannot you remove the commissioner and reappoint a commissioner to the bribery commission. Is that feasible under the provisions of the law?
That is the biggest problem. This has been enacted in 1995. That was the first act brought by Mrs. Kumaratunga's government. There is no provision for the removal of those members. That is the biggest issue. But under the new amendment, they will act only until the new commissioners are appointed. Then thereafter automatically the duties will be relinquished.
Mr. Minister, you spoke about the bribery commission. I want to drag your attention to February 26th, after you all took over the government on the 29th of January. What happened with the central bank? You are an individual who have fought against corruption for many, many years. However, central bank issue, we saw the Minister of Justice, Mr. Vijaydas Rajapaksa, being very silent.
No, in fact, I was not really silent. That I participated in a couple of debates with the opposition former ministers also. I myself examined that. There were few irregularities, namely they advertised only for 1 billion but they went on for 10 billion. And secondly, that there was a doubt created as to whether there was any malpractice committed as one of the investors in a particular company which had bought a substantial amount of the bonds was a son-in-law of the central bank governor. Apart from that, when I examined the other aspects of it, all these issues had come up as that they have gone for an auction. Prior to that, the former governor had resorted to private placement. This only issue is as to whether there had been any loss to the state. For the purpose of making that calculation, what you will have to look at the interest rate before and after.
But what the integrity of the governor of the central bank has come into question.
Yes.
Do you agree on that?
No, that is true. In fact, that when this issue was brought before the party leaders in the parliament, we who suggested that there has to be some investigation through the court.
Even the president in his statement said that he recommended
Yes.
to the prime minister to remove the governor of the central bank. Does that mean that the prime minister was acting based on his own whim and fancy at this time?
No, I think the prime minister was of the view that just because some people make allegation, if we resort to remove him, then indirectly that you are admitting that he has done something wrong. And that is why the prime minister took up a very firm stand, have an impartial inquiry on it. Of course, that it was referred to the COPE. Unfortunately, that's the COPE committee could not conclude it and tender a report before that parliament was dissolved, that they have allegation because of that only parliament was dissolved. I think that is not correct. In fact, the parliament, the power to dissolve the parliament is vested with the president. That he dissolved the parliament not because of this was only a petty issue considering the others. That he had to dissolve the parliament because the opposition wanted to bring the no confidence against the prime minister. And as a result, that's the without passing the 20th amendment, which was relating to the electoral reform, then that would become another disaster. That is why the president dissolved the parliament. Of course, that we are concerned as much as that you are concerned about this issue. That soon after the next, we start the next session of the parliament, we will resort to some kind of mechanism to see in fact whether there was any irregularity and also whether there were any loss to the state.
We saw D.W. Gunasekara heading the COPE committee before we saw the way in which you handled the COPE committee as well. You were the chairman of the COPE committee in the year 2007. Who will be the COPE committee chairman? Are there any suggestions that would be made by
Not yet,
your
but
party?
that, yes, the party leaders will have to decide who should be. In fact, the procedure is the party leaders can nominate their respective number of members as members to the committee. Then the members of the committee will have to elect a chairman. That is how I was elected in 2006.
You have voiced your opinion. You've been very vocal about the members of the COPE committee as well. I recollect in 2011 when D.W. Gunasekara was appointed, you said in developed democracies, you don't have ministers and deputy ministers as members of the COPE committee. Will that really come into play this time?
In fact,
or will you also resort to the same format as the previous regime?
in fact, it's a good question that I will agitate on it, because throughout I maintain the position that no ministers or deputies should be appointed as members of the COPE, because the purpose of the COPE committee, originally it was known as Public Accounts Committee, since there are so many government institutions during the Jayatiyawardana's period, that was divided into two committees. That is how we have COPE and PAC both. In fact, this was started in 1860 during the period of Gladstone, Prime Minister. The main purpose was just to, oversee the conduct of the executive. When the executive themselves sitting as members of the COPE or the PAC, the purpose is lost. And therefore, that's for a particular period that we have maintained that noble tradition, that only members who are not holding any portfolio can become the members of the select committees. These two select committees, and especially the chairmanship has to be given to an opposition member. I still believe that has to be the practice we will have to adopt even in this parliament.
In 2007, I just want to revisit your report. You named subject ministers as culprits behind the massive corruption and fraud. And then you see in 2008, 2009, many from the opposition crossing over to the government and pledging their support, and members who supported the government at that time were also members who were named in your list, and then we saw you crossing over to the opposition as well.
No,
Will you revisit those cases?
No, in fact, it happened in this way. Not after several months, the first COPE report was presented on 12th January 2007. 17 days after that, 29th of January, 18 members of the UNP crossed over to the government and became ministers.
Absolutely correct.
Then, in fact, that on the previous day, 28th, then President Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa called me and asked what is the ministry that I like to take over. Before that, I said that I want to know whether you are going to appoint those UNP members. We didn't know who the members were. That you are getting UNP members, are you going to appoint them as ministers? He said that he has to do it. Then I said that don't do that kind of injustice to me by getting myself to sit with them, whereas I have written reports saying that they are culprits. Then thereafter I refused to accept any portfolio.
In 2007, you, on policy basis, you withdrew as the Minister of State Banks. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, that was before that. I was appointed just after that he was elected in November 2005.
Right.
I resigned from the ministry in April 2006.
So, yeah, okay.
Then the next month I was elected as the chairman of the COPE. Then I worked for about 7 to 8 months. And I presented my first report in January 2007. 17 days after that, this change took place. When I was invited to be the member of that cabinet, I refused. And I said that I will just remain as the chairman of the COPE. But thereafter, of course, after this lot crossed over to that side, that there were a lot of discrimination, a lot of harassment on me. The former president wanted me to resign from the COPE, but I didn't resign. Then he prorogued the parliament for 3 weeks, just purely for the purpose of getting rid of me from the office of the chairman of the COPE. That is how it happened at that time. But now, of course, that I firmly believe we'll have to follow.
Will you revisit those cases? Now you're the Minister of Justice. You have power for the next 4.5 years minimum and 5 years overall.
On certain certain matters, I think that is significant to note at this stage. On certain matters, though they did not take any positive step, there were 2 cases filed. As a result of 2 cases, the privatization of insurance corporation, together with that one, the Apollo Hospital and various other shares of private banks came back to state back. Then also 8.5 acres of the Colombo Fort.
So all this is going to be a closed chapter.
Closed chapters. And there are some more. Certainly that's in the next parliament, I hope, just to refer those things to the new COPE committee and the PAC. If you may recall that for the first time, I created a new culture in the parliament and brought a resolution that about 16 transactions which had been reflected as fraudulent transactions in my report to be referred to the bribery commission. Then Speaker Sir Vijayamalla Lokubandara forwarded them to the bribery commission with a direction in every 2 weeks time that a progressive report must come back to the parliament. But when they started it, of course, you know, that's one of the police officers was transferred to Ampara. Then in the following week, Director General of the Bribery Commission was transferred to the Presidential Secretariat pool, and that is how it was obstructed. But still, I know that there are some major transactions where a huge sum of money is involved. I hope to drag all those things through the new committees. In my capacity as a Minister of Justice, I may not be able to do it, but I can get the service, the support of these committees.
Subsequent to your appointment as Minister of Justice, you state in the prison riots report that individuals were selected and killed. What is the progress of the outcome of this report now?
In fact, that before I assumed the duties, there had been a committee appointed by the former minister, which was chaired by a retired High Court judge. When I studied that thing, the whole purpose was just to whitewash the entire scene. There was no credibility at all. Therefore, I got a new retired High Court judge and 2 other members to go through that, and they have already given us a comprehensive report. Now I have entrusted that task to the Inspector General of Police. He said that he has already started some inquiries and he is having some materials.
But nothing has been done yet.
Nothing has been done yet. Now, of course, this was given, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. Now, I have given specific directions that he has to restart the investigation. He can make use whatever.
Why not give this report to the Attorney General's department?
I gave it.
To pursue the matter?
Certainly. That is with the supervision of the Attorney General only, that they will have to carry out now, since there is a report.
Is the Attorney General's department dysfunctional?
No. Why do you say so?
We see the manner in which how during the previous regime, the Attorney General's department was bringing out cases in a very rapid pace on certain respects. However, nothing has been done.
No. What happened was
the 8th of January.
What happened was, during the last regime, the Attorney General was a subject that has been gazetted under the President. And the Attorney Generals were compelled to, always act according to the direction given by the President or his officials. That is what has happened on the selected basis, on the political cases and various people against whom that they have formed some idea that they were brought into court so quickly, and others against whom there had been some charges, indictments, including the murder, had been withdrawn. All kinds of things happened during the last regime. Now, of course, that Attorney General department quite independently, we don't give any directions because it is not correct as the political authority. We have created an environment that they can impartially and independently take their own decision and continue. But
as Minister of Justice, do you think they are acting a little bit slow as expected?
It may be that due to the prevailing, due to the prevailing, circumstances which we had in this country. But in certain cases, for example, that there was one case, some notorious case, whereas for 3 years that they had not filed any indictment. But when we came in, we wanted to do it quickly. But when you look at this thing, that of course it's a time-consuming one. That's about 3,000 to 4,000 pages of evidence that they will have to evaluate. Then after that, they will have to frame
before the 8th of January, before the presidential election, your party, the United National Party, which supported the common candidate, President Maithripala Sirisena, said there's a lot of corruption taking place in the country. We will arrest those who are corrupt and put them behind bars. Hence, vote for change. However, last 8 to 9 months, nothing concrete has come about.
Why not that? So we have already filed about over 30 cases under the bribery law.
Where are the arrests?
No, that cases are pending. That they have surrendered to the courts, and most of the accused, and most of them are on bail, and some people are in jail. And
the manifesto of President Maithripala Sirisena very clearly states that the names of those who are corrupt, the names of those who are engaged in drug dealing, ethanol, so on and so forth, will be revealed to the public. Nothing of that sort. No document has been published yet.
No,
Was it a political gimmick?
No, it is, I think that you are referring to the news items that appeared, what had been said by the chairman of the Dangerous Drug Authority.
No, I'm referring to the manifesto itself.
Yes, certainly. That's we are going ahead with that. In fact, there is a presidential task force. I am also a member of it, especially to deal with that drug menace. And all these investigations are going on. That you also aware that there were two drug peddlers we brought from Pakistan, and a lot of informations are coming out. They will come at an appropriate time, and we will take action, because we cannot rush through. And also during last 2 to 3 months that there was no any certainty about that. Our government also, because our target was to dissolve the government on 29th of April. And
24th of April.
Although it's so, but later on we wanted an extension, because we got the finally 19th amendment approved only on 28th of April.
When the word of arrest now goes about, individuals go to courts to challenge it. Is there a failure in the justice system in the country?
No, that is a right of everybody, because...
But we didn't see this before the 8th of January.
No, that was there. That's Fundamental Rights chapter, which was introduced in 1978. That's anybody who thinks that there had been some miscarriage of justice, it is a right of every
Even
person.
before the arrests are made?
Yes. Even there is a law, that anticipatory bail law was promulgated, I think 15 to 20 years ago. If you have any suspicion that there will be any arrest, that you can go to court prior to that and explain it by giving the undertaking that you will not abscond the court. You can have the anticipatory bail. That is, I think it's accepted norms in all the democratic countries, that fundamental rights had been recognized, that we should not deprive that right. But finally, after the conduct of the trial, the judges are empowered to decide whether he is found guilty or not, and to impose the punishment.
Minister Rajapaksa, is Sri Lanka now acting based on the whim and fancy of the international community?
Not at all.
What makes you say that?
Now really the international community was interfering into most of the affairs in this country due to lack of diplomacy on the part of our state. And those diplomats, so-called diplomats, were not competent to safeguard the interest of the country. And the former regime did not want to have competent people to be appointed also. And the classic example, now although that's the people are trying to give different versions, the last resolution that was passed in Geneva and brought forward by America, that is not in relation to the war. It is in relation to the violation of human rights after the war. As you suggest, as you pointed out, the Valikada case, then that's on the water issue, Ratu Paswala, then thereafter...
But the international community has been very vocal about the final stages of the conflict. And in 2011, when the UNHRC first debated and put Sri Lanka on its agenda, this was the focal point. I want to drag your attention to the Darusman report that was published by the Secretary General.
Yeah, that is obvious. That is obvious. When a war is over, normally the parties agree that they have some kind of agitation, and there is a Tamil diaspora in many parts of the world, and that is obvious. You will have to expect it. But under the international law, that there was no any possibility of having international investigation with regard to the war or whatever the incident happened in Sri Lanka.
Because we are not signatories to the Rome Statute.
But the problem was that the former government, I don't know whether they had the knowledge or not, they had signed an agreement with the Ban Ki-moon on 23rd of May 2009.
What was the agreement?
That is the agreement because in the Rome Convention, although a country is not a party, if that particular country gives the consent to have investigation over violation of human rights, then the UN has got the authority to do it. That they relied on exception in Article 12 of the Rome Convention. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon came to Sri Lanka within 48 hours after the conclusion of the war, Then within 4 days time, on 23rd of May 2009, he got the signature of the Sri Lankan government.
Are you referring to the joint statement that was issued?
That is exactly because they
But the
purposely
joint
did it.
statement does not in any way indicate that there will be a domestic mechanism in Sri Lanka, nor an international investigation as suggested by you right now.
Joint statement categorically, in the contents it says that the President of Sri Lanka has undertaken. Just
Undertaken the responsibility if there is a violation of human rights.
If there is violation of human rights, that there will be a domestic mechanism. And with that one that he appointed LLRC.
But
that
the
was his
report
obligation.
is not mentioned anywhere in this.
No, it is there.
Question.
The next paragraph, I can show you, the next paragraph says that Darusman is empowered to have a mechanism with the international standard. And if you look at the terms of reference given to Darusman by Ban Ki-moon, it categorically says in terms of the power, authority we got from the GOSL, Government of Sri Lanka, that I am appointing you to look into the violation of human rights.
But that report could not have been published. Now, this is according to your letter sent to
the 28th.
UN Secretary General. You say in the letter that he does not have the right, according to the UN Charter, to publish this report and act based on this report in question.
But I wrote
this was after consultation with the President and the then opposition leader.
No, I sent the letter on 25th of April 2011. The report was published on 28th, 3 days after.
Absolutely correct.
Yes, in that report itself, when Darusman has commenced his report stating this authority has been given by the Sri Lankan government to Darusman, and Darusman has delegated that power for him to do the investigation. In that report only it comes that there had been the killing of civilians, that killing of white flag people, all kinds of things emerged as a result of Darusman. That is due to lack of diplomacy on the part of the former regime, that we had to face all these situations. Now, of course, with the improvement of the human rights activities in Sri Lanka, as well as the good governance, then the rule of law, I think that no country was able, the way that we did, just to turn their decision topsy-turvy. Now, they are agreeable to bring a resolution.
The international community over the last few years, since 2009, has been pressing for an international investigation.
Correct.
However, now they are saying that they will support a domestic mechanism.
Yes.
What does it mean? Does that mean that they have the rightful government they wanted to be appointed in the country?
No, that is not the case. That's any government, any democratic government, if there is any violation of human rights, then there has to be a accountable process. Whether there was a war or otherwise, it makes no difference. That is a must. And therefore, we undertook, before the election, we told the international community, if there is any violation of human rights, that we will resolve all these issues through a domestic process, and we need not have an international process. And that is what we were agitating. Even the last government, they were agitating for 5 years in the international arena, and they have spent billions and billions of money by paying some media institutions, some agencies, just to, clear the image of Sri Lanka.
Community, are you referring to states or are you referring to the Tamil diaspora?
Not Tamil diaspora, a lot of agencies, that's basically media agencies. And 500 million had been paid by one of the media institutions in USA. Another 500 million to one of the agencies in UK. All these monies had been paid by the central bank. That is just to create a good image about the Sri Lanka. All these things in vain. And now, during last 8 months period, we demonstrated to the whole world that we have upheld the rule of law in this country, and there is no interference into the human rights, that the religious harmony we have maintained. One of the allegations that was included in the last resolution by the US was that there had been over 393 incidents of attacking or burning religious institutions, temples or kovils and churches. And during the 8 months period, nothing happened, and therefore the international community is quite confident that we are the government which can resolve all these issues in the country.
The former president, following his defeat, President Mahinda Rajapaksa, said that it was the West and India that toppled him. Does that mean those countries favored your government coming into power?
I think it's a statement somewhat ridiculous. We must not get entangled with that internet. That is how they created, issues among international community during regime also. That how can they, does he say that the Indian people came and voted here? Neither Indian nor American people voted here. That's our Sri Lankan. Only Sri Lankans voted here. I don't think that we must go up to that extent. It's some statement with a frustration.
Are we getting angry with countries like China who are now dominating the world economy somewhat and getting closer to the West? Is that the right strategy at this point of time?
Not at all. We are not aligned to any country or any regional power. So we just maintain that the non-aligned policy, which is the best, that most of our leaders followed, that we will follow it up, that we have a good relations with China. We visited China. In fact, during President Mahinda Rajapaksa's period, they had not donated a single penny to this country. But when we visited, we signed 5 agreements recently, whereas that they are willing to put up some hospitals, that kidney hospital in Polonnaruwa, so worth about $800 million. But all these monies for the Hambantota, Mattala airport, for everything, that's the previous government had borrowed on commercial rates. That is why that's our debt has gone up to 9,000 billion rupees.
So development will come to a standstill under the UNP regime?
Never.
Infrastructure development will come to a standstill?
The history shows that whenever UNP government was in power, only there had been developments in the country.
However, the last 2 decades or so, the UNP has only governed the country for nearly 2.5 years to 3 years.
Yes.
Can you come into conclusion that your government will now steer and move forward and forge ahead and bring about development in this country?
We give that guarantee that you can wait for 6 months and see as to how that we will start our development work. We have all the plans, we have all the vision, and we have all the experts to do it, unlike in the previous regime.
Minister Rajapaksa, final stage of our interview. I want to talk a little bit about your ministry now, the Ministry of Justice. You were appointed for the 2nd time. You saw the manner in which you took oaths after the presidential elections. Now you took oaths again as a Minister of Justice, being among the 3 cabinet ministers who were appointed by the Prime Minister. I want to know, you have an archaic policy, archaic law in the country. This is an allegation that has been leveled by many individuals. The process takes a lot of time. In order to arrest the situation, do you have any thinking in mind?
I concede it. In fact, we have realized that throughout. I myself was a practitioner in the field of law, and quite correctly you said that archaic laws, that criminal procedure code as well as the civil procedure code, had been enacted as far back in 1880 and 1890. Now more than 120-30 years ago, when there was only 1 or 2 cases per week in the District Court of Colombo. There had been in between that there had been some amendments to the law, but still I concede that is not sufficient. Now, as an urgent measure to expedite all these civil litigations, that we have already drafted some mediatory process before the trial began. The judge to get involved in the mediatory process, that we hope a substantial percentage of the cases will be resolved without going through the trial. In addition to that, I have an idea of having a completely new procedure. This dilapidated, all these stale procedures will have to abolish. And also that with this new high technology, we are making some arrangement just to have this email filing of cases, filing of papers also just started. And with regard to the criminal matters, of course, that we are...
You have now, the session is, example, let's take the court in session. Now it's nearly only 5 hours, approximately, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then you have a lunch break in the middle, in between, and you have only 5 hours. Are you intending to increase this at least for 8 hours to ensure that the public are benefited from the justice system in our country?
There is no such a restricted period, that some of the judges I know, they work even till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. That depends on the individual interest of a particular judge. those are the matters to be decided by the Judicial Service Commission. As you suggest, in fact, that it was in my mind too, that we will go for a consultative process with the Judicial Committee, which is headed by the Chief Justice. That Judicial Committee, we will have to make some adjustment on that, as you quite correctly suggested, that we can increase the number of hours, and also with the intervention, this mediative process, I think that there will be more results.
As soon as you took office, following the 8th of January, you said that there's a dearth of employees in the Justice Department, the prison, so on and so forth. And you put this number at 400. You said approximately around 400 individuals need to be recruited in order to strengthen the prison system and even the justice system. However, have you been nearly 400? I saw in a paper article that nearly 400 individuals need to be recruited
to the prison.
To the prisons.
In fact, that we recruited 500 jail guards.
No, but my question is not about the recruitment. My question is, you all said that contraband comes in to the justice system. However, there are not even CCTVs in most of the prisons in the island. How can you arrest this problem, if so?
That is true. In fact, that we were having a couple of discussions that they had brought some, for the Valikada prison, of course, some machine. I cannot remember, that's the technical term of it, just to detect any prohibited things.
A screening machine.
Screening machine. And with regard to the CCTV also, that we had a couple of discussions, we have not finally decided what is the method to be followed in. In addition to that, when we are taking certain decisions in relation to these prisons, that there are a lot of regulations in the international law, we'll have to follow them also.
Fixed penalty notice. This is something that many people are talking about. Will this be introduced under a UNP regime where spot fines will be introduced?
Of the motor traffic offence?
Absolutely.
There was no any suggestion to reduce it, but there were some suggestions certain other offences also can be included into the list of these fixed penalties.
You are looking at a hangman now. The Ministry of Justice is looking at recruiting a hangman, and this has been very futile over the last couple of years. Does that mean capital punishment is going to come into play? The death sentence is going to be imposed? Is that something on the cards of your regime?
No, I cannot give an exact answer to that issue, but that's a lot of politicians, including the President, has reminded the nation, unless this rate of, the large number of crime rate is reduced, so we'll have to think about. So far we have not taken any decision. We know the implications, that's when you have to go for execution, there are a lot of victims. In addition to that, there will be a lot of international pressure also. Anyway, that finally our target is somehow to reduce the rate of crimes.
What is the future in terms of the Ministry of Justice? How do you view?
In fact, that's the Ministry of Justice is the most important ministry as far as I am concerned, because all these developments, other activities, human rights, everything depend upon the maintenance of the rule of law. In the first place, that you will have to make good laws. The second, you will have to implement the law. If both things are simultaneously not done properly, that's the whole purpose is lost. And therefore, there are lot of, in the first place, that we will have to give the priority to a new constitution. Then there are so many bills, as I told you, the right to information, the independent audit commission bill. Then I got the cabinet approval recently for the enactment of children's judicial protection bill, and that there are some bills relating to Buddhist temporalities and Buddhist discipline, and it's about 30-40 bills are on the line.
What is the way forward for a country like Sri Lanka? How must we move forward?
Yes, that's.
What is your message to the public who appointed you to office?
No, that is what I said. That we'll have to basically pass all these laws, and that's to establish the rule of law.
Now there are 3 ministers.
You will have to give the confidence to the people. This is a country with the rule of law, as that Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. Otherwise, nobody will come and make any investment in Sri Lanka. That is the issue.
You have 3 ministers now. That is D.M. Swaminathan as the Minister of Resettlement. You have Mangala Samanira as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and then you have Mr. Vijaydas Rajapaksa as the Minister of Justice. How many more ministers in this national government, and how many deputy ministers?
I cannot give an exact answer. That tentatively it may be about 45 ministers.
45 ministers, and how many deputy ministers?
Maybe equal number.
45 ministers and 45 deputy ministers.
Deputies and state, both.
So it's going to be a large cabinet.
Large cabinet.
Is this because you want to fulfill the aspirations of those in the cabinet?
No, that is basically that we promise for a national government, for a temporary arrangement, at least for a period of 2 years. Then if we resolve these things, then after that, of course, we will be able to go for a smaller cabinet.
When will the cabinet sworn in?
Tentatively on 2nd.
However, Dumin Disanayak, the acting SLFP General Secretary, had said that on the 2nd they will not have the cabinet of ministers being appointed because they have the anniversary of the party.
Yeah, that depends on the party leaders can decide on it. Because that was the parties had agreed on 2nd. That I think that they knew this party anniversary also fallen on the same day.
Sri Lanka, nearly 90 ministers, that is state ministers, cabinet ministers and deputy ministers. How must we move forward? I leave it to the public to decide. The United National Party will be forming a national government with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party led United People's Freedom Alliance in the future. The leader of the opposition is a big question mark. On the 1st of September, Parliament will convene. What will happen next? We'll discuss all this and more on our next week's edition of Newsfirst in Focus. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Minister, for joining us.
Welcome.
Despite your demanding schedule. Take care and good night.